Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So the last time we were doing a tutorial on how we can fetch data from our database, which is a JSON file using JavaScript. And today I will be making a tutorial on how we can render those data to our web pages using JavaScript. And this is going to enable us know how vast and how useful JavaScript is. So I'll be doing a bit of some coding today so as to help us render the data that we have fetched so far from the server on our web page. So let's get down there and see what we can do, how we can use JavaScript to manipulate our DOM, which is our HTML files, and do some work with it. So right here I have my coding environment, and this is my JavaScript file. But first, let's see what the HTML file looks like. So in the HTML file, I have this div element that has the class attribute of cards. So we would be manipulating this particular div element using JavaScript, and we would render those data to the web page using this particular class of cards. So let's get down to our JavaScript file and work there and see what we can achieve. So firstly, I would be creating a variable, and I would call it product cards, and then I would use the documents.query selector and grab the class attribute. The cards attribute. I need to confirm that. Yeah, it's cards. So we get that down on our JavaScript file. And then next, create a function. And this function, I am going to call the function build product. Okay. And in the build product function, I'm going to pass in a parameter called data. I would be using this data to fetch the contents of the JSON file. So I'll take the data, and then I said use this parameter, go into the JSON file and look for the object called electronics. And then when I get the electronics, I would use this and use the for each loop. Using the for each loop, I'm going to create another parameter that is going to be called product, and then use an anonymous function to create other elements I would be using on my web page. So I'm going to create a variable called cards, and then I would use the document.createElement to create an element, an HTML element of section. And then next, I would create another variable I would call img. I would also use the document.createElement to create an HTML element called img. And then lastly, I would create another variable called p, and then use the document.createElement to create an HTML element called p. And then after doing this, the next thing I'm going to do is I will create a variable called product name. I will call it product name, and this variable is going to hold the data I would be getting from the JSON file. So I'm going to use JavaScript template literals to do this. So I'm going to say now, use this parameter called product, and then fetch me the key in the JSON file called product name. And then next, I would be creating another variable, and then I'm going to call it product details. And these product details, I'm going to use the JavaScript template literal using the product parameter to get the key called product details. Now I've gotten these two keys, and the next thing I'm going to do is I would be using the img variable that I created and give it certain attributes, and I would be creating an HTML attribute called source, and then I would be using the product parameter to get the key called product image. And after I've gotten the product image, I would also use the img variable created, and then I'll set an attribute. Now this other attribute, I'm setting it for the function whereby sometimes the image is not fetched immediately, so it can actually display the image title instead of waiting for the image to show, because if we have to wait for the image to show, this might dull the web performance and then it would give the user an ugly user experience. So I'm going to give it an alt attribute using JavaScript template literals. I would say this is an image of the product name. This is an image of the product name, and it's going to give the product name as assigned to it. And then lastly, I'm going to set another attribute to the image, and I would be using a tactic called lazy loading of images, and this is also to enable the user have a good user experience when this is in the page, in case the network is slow, so he doesn't have to wait for the images to load. Other content of the HTML file can be shown whilst the image is loading. And then I would use the p elements created, and then I'm going to send the content of the product details to the HTML file. And then after doing this, I'm going to grab this card variable that I created, which holds the elements of a function of a section, and then I would use this card to append all the img variables that I created so far. I would also use the card to append the p elements. And then the next thing I would do is I would grab these product cards, and then I would append, I'm going to append this card to this. So that means everything here was moved into this card, which is a section, and then I'm now moving this section into this particular card, which is a div element in our HTML file. So I'm going to append card, and right there I would get to do this again. So here we need to call the function called build product and pass it a parameter called data. If we do not do this, then the function is not going to be of an effect. It won't take an effect because it is not being called. So it is necessary that you call this particular function so it can work when it is needed. So right here, I've created a function passing a parameter called data, and then I use data to get to the electronics and use a for each loop, create a parameter called product, and then use this particular function to do the work of fetching those data and then rendering them on our web page. So next, let's save this, get back to our HTML file, and make sure that the details are correct. Having confirmed everything, I would love to run my HTML file. So let's run the HTML file and check our web page to see if these products are going to be rendered on the screen. So I'm opening it with Lifesaver, and right here we have the content of our data displaying on the screen. So I have the image of each of the products, and I have their details. The image and their details, the image, each of the images and their details rendered on the screen. So right there we have our data fetched, and then they are rendered on the screen, and from here you can manipulate it further using your cascading style sheet, which is CSS, or you can decide to get back to your JavaScript file and then add some other details to it. So furthermore, maybe I can say I would want to create another P tag, and then I'm going to call it P1, and I would use the document dot create element, and then I would want to create an element of an HTML element of P, and then because right there we are only having the image and the product details, so I'm going to use the P1, and then I would use P1 to set an inner HTML that would be holding the product name. So that holds the product name. Right now, we also have to use card to append our P1. So we have it appended to the card, which is therefore appended to the product cards. So now let's get back to our HTML and see if we are going to have the product name. Yeah, so we have the product name here: wireless, sample, Bluetooth. We also have smart Android LED, and all of that, the product name, they are showing. So guys, that's how you can use JavaScript to manipulate your DOM, your document object module, to manipulate your HTML file. And you can use JavaScript to do a lot, render data to your web page, and use CSS to style them. That's how great JavaScript is, and it's very lovely when you know how to use this to work. So next, I would want you to stay tuned. Please guys, hit the subscribe button. Your comments are welcomed. Please do well to drop your comments there at the comment section, and do well to like the video. Next, I would be working with CSS. I would be doing a tutorial on CSS and how we can style our web page as we have rendered those products on the web page. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching.